What's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. Today we're doing a forehand technique comparison between Holger Rune and Andrey Rublev. And the reason is because as a junior, Holger tried to copy Rublev's forehand technique. So we're doing a side-by-side comparison to find out how close Holger got.
The future is now.
All right, guys, so before we jump into the analysis, we want to give a shout out to 12KGP Tennis's YouTube channel. That's where the footage for this particular video came from. So we've got Andrey Rublev on the left and Holger Rune on the right. Let's jump into the actual analysis now, guys. So we're just going to start with all the similarities one by one. The first thing that we see from both guys that's really, really good and really strong is a good, wide, athletic foundation and position right here, where the feet get much wider than shoulder width apart. We see that with Rune over here on the right and with Rublev over here on the left. Moving forward from that position, guys, couple differences right off the bat. The first significant difference that we see with Rublev and Rune is Rublev's racket is considerably more vertical right here as he's in the preparation position compared to Rune, who has the racket much more pointed forward, just like this, right? Another difference, and the reason that happens is because Rune has his racket much lower with the position of his hands than Rublev does. His racket's down by his knees, and Rublev has it between the knees and the hips. So because it's not as low for Rublev, it's not pointed forward quite as much. So that low hand position leads to the racket pointed more forward. Let's move forward from there a little bit, guys. And we can see, though, that now Rune starts to bring the racket up, and Rublev does as well. Rublev's strings are more pointed towards his opponent at this stage of the forehand swing, and Rune has his strings pointed a little bit more off to the side at this stage of the swing compared to Rublev. Another difference in this part of the swing is Rublev has a much more bent hitting arm. The right arm is much more bent in the shape of an L, and Rune, while having some bend in the arm, has a straighter arm at this stage than Rublev does, and that's going to come into play in a little bit. So moving forward from here, guys, the next thing that we notice is that Rune has let go of the throat of the racket with his left arm pretty early compared to Rublev. Rublev still has the left hand on the throat of the racket right here, so Rune has a much earlier release of the throat of the racket than Rublev does on the forehand side. As we go forward from there, the next thing that we can see, right, Rune still racket strings pointed to the side, pretty typical on the Pro Tour. Rublev is getting to that position or getting closer to that area, but he still has the racket tilted forward here. And we can see that Rublev's hitting elbow, right, is considerably higher and further away from the body than Rune's. Rune keeps his elbow a little bit more down as he goes through the preparation with the swing. Now that Rublev has let go, the next thing that we can see that's a little bit different here is because Rublev has his elbow more up and away from the body, right, and closer to shoulder level, his racket is more tilted forward than Rune over here on the right. Rune has a little bit of racket tilt forward here, you can see it, but his elbow position being a little bit more down, mid-torso area compared to Rublev over here, means the racket tilt will not be as big as we see with Rublev. And the big advantage for Rune on that is that by having a lower elbow position, it doesn't take him as long to get through the swing. It's going to take Rublev longer to get through his swing than it is Rune. So that's one key to remember on the forehand. In this day and age, the game, how fast it's getting and how big it's getting, even Rafa commented about the speed of the game and how it's basically a power game now. Having strokes that you can get through quicker and it takes less time is vitally important in the future of tennis. So moving forward from there, guys, we can see Rublev's arm, the non-hitting arm now, finally starting to straighten out, right? His hand is kind of pointed down towards the ground, and Rune's is pointed more off to his side. So they have a little bit different of a hand position. It's all very similar. You can have it like this. You can have it like this. Whatever comes naturally to you with that is totally fine. But again, look at the elbow position here from Rublev compared to Rune. Let's start talking about some more similarities. One thing that they definitely have in common is the loading of the legs. So Rune and Rublev both have a strong semi-open stance. Rune has the left foot a little bit more to the left on this particular ball, but a semi-open stance is when you have your left foot in front of your right foot like this, and your right foot is your loading leg, the leg that you're going to use to generate power from the ground with. Also in this position, we can also see, right, the chin for each player, right, is looking directly over the non-hitting shoulder right there, the front arm, chin looking over that shoulder. We see it with Rublev, and we see it with Rune right here. Exact same position. Another similarity, right? The strings of the racket now at this point of the swing for Rublev are pointed back and down towards the ground. Similar position here with Rune on the right. So very similar. Love the position of everything here. They basically look almost the exact same. Let's move forward from here, guys, real quick. And we can see, look at Rune on the right especially. He already has his hitting arm completely straight, and he's going to use that straight arm hitting position at contact with the ball. With Rublev, the arm is still just a little bit bent over here on the left side. So Rune achieves a straight arm forehand earlier in the swing than Rublev. Rune achieves that position with the racket head still on the right side of his body. For Rublev, the arm doesn't get completely straight as we go forward here until it gets behind him into this slotted position right here. Okay, so Rune achieves the straight arm earlier than Rublev. To me, it doesn't matter who achieves it earlier. It's just a difference in the timing of when they both get there. So we can see Rublev now getting the straight arm forehand completely locked in with the tip of the racket well behind the body. And there's a couple really big keys we want to get into here, guys, and things I've mentioned for a really long time. Number one, some of the biggest forehands in the world, they will achieve a position with the tip of the racket head well behind their hitting elbow. And both of these players achieve that position right here. You want a big flip on your forehand. This is about as big as it gets. Both these guys have a really large flip on their forehand. And then from that position, guys, one thing we want to notice with both guys, and something they do really well, is they use the ground. We talked about that. The legs start bent in this athletic position, but then as the racket starts to drive forward, what happens to that right leg, right? The right leg starts to straighten out, and they use the ground force to ultimately deliver more power into the ball. Super important. Something a lot of rec players do not efficiently do is have rhythm with their movement and use the legs to generate force. From this position, we see some more similarities between the two. Butt cap of the racket is pointed forward to the ball for both guys. This should happen naturally if you have a really strong flip on your forehand. And then from here, pushing off the ground with that leg, right, and extending it, getting it more straight at contact, and then rotating those hips. Look at the hip here on Rune. Rotating into contact as well as the shoulders. One small difference on this particular ball, and Rublev is known for being a little bit more of a flat ball hitter. With a flat ball hitter on the forehand or backhand side, you'll see that the tip of the racket right there will not be tilted as far down or angled down as much for a flat ball hitter as it will for somebody who's getting a little more topspin on the ball like Rune. So Rune's angle down with the racket here is further down than it is for Rublev. His angle's a little bit more straight across, with again, Rune going a little bit more tilted down. That allows you to hit with a little bit more topspin. Rublev is known to be a very penetrating flat ball hitter. The next thing we see with both guys, right? Eyes locked down at the ball at contact, even though you can't physically see the ball at contact. It's a habit, and also having your head locked into that position helps you to disguise the direction of your shot. So keep your eyes down towards the ball at contact to help disguise where your shot is going. And then just moving forward from there, guys, we have a couple more tiny differences coming. And one of them, and the biggest noticeable one, is Rune keeps his hitting arm straight well after contact with the ball. And Rublev's arm is now bent back into that L position, right? So that's a pretty big difference from one to the other, as Rune really maintains the straight arm position through the contact, and even on this one, through the follow through for quite a long time, where Rublev's has folded into that relaxed L position. Both guys turn the racket over and the strings over, right? And then what we see on the end is another little tiny difference. So just individually look at Rune's non-hitting arm, right? It's a little bit more up and above his shoulder, and Rublev's non-hitting arm folds naturally closer in towards his torso right there. And then both guys finish. So what a compliment for Holger Rune to pay to Andrey Rublev, that he essentially tried to copy his forehand technique the best that he possibly could, because he really admired it, right? So that's awesome. But you can see, even when you try to copy or idolize someone's forehand and try to implement that exact forehand, there will always be little tiny differences in what your body does versus someone else. Even if you have most of the big key elements, there's some little tiny details in there that will not be the same. All right, that wraps it up for this video on Rune versus Rublev on the forehand side. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something today, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. It helps this channel continue to grow. I'm Jason Frausto for tennisunleashed.net. I'll see you next time.
The future is now.